can comment on the Facebook page, and some of the feedbacks that we've received from the previous show that we did with Sheikh Ahmed was we was a little bit tough on the parents, and so we will address some of that issue. So it is actually the reason why we it seemed that we were a little bit tough with Hasahai, because we're very passionate about this stuff. And to us it's not something that is it was something that is that was in our heart, and we felt like it had to be said. So no hard feelings. Obviously walidintena waj'alnaha, we love them to bits, and we appreciate everything that they've done for us, and it's nothing more than that. So sometimes waxa way hada oo adiga shay oo waxa jira adiga oo aragtid it might seem okay to you, like into others it's a little bit heavy or strongly worded or something. So I think waxas amal hadas jiro, you can always give us a feedback, and please we value your feedbacks, and everything that we do, and obviously it's for the community. It's for us and the community, so that it is actually a beneficial, hopefully, to us and to the rest of the Somali society here in the UK and everybody else. Actually, this week I was doing a bit of research, and whatever that you see, any problem that you see in this country, you can exactly copy and paste it in other places. For example, in Norway, in Denmark, in Holland, the problems is pretty much similar. It's the same. So it's a different environment, different country, but the challenges remain exactly the same. So hopefully, inshallah, in this topic, we will try to tackle some of that. Why is it that Somalis, no matter where they are, why do we have the same problem regardless of which country that we settle in? So inshallah, Sheikh Ahmed, if you wanna say something about the previous show that we did, and you may kick off, inshallah.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me back, first of all.
Thank you very much. Pleasure.
I think we were a little bit harsh last time, but I think we were passionately harsh, not
passionate. That's how I put it. That's how I put it. Yeah.
Stigmatized for no reason. We had a lot of passion behind us, so we wanted to carry that forward. We wanted to make sure that the future generations are getting the right parenting, getting the right support that they need. waalidiinteena waxa waaye maasha Allah horta dhib badan ay la soo kulmeen.
صح.
dhib badan ay la soo kulmeen intaysan imaanin. waxa waaye dagaalkii Somali iyo waxyaabahaas anaga hadda ka hadlayno, dad badan oo adiga meeshan kuraastan soo fadhiistay kala hadlay.
صح.
dadkaas maasha Allah si fiican ay information uga bixiyaan, marka anima bisi galay.
صح.
laakiin dhibaatooyinka ay la kulmeen waalidkeena ama waalidiinteena waxa waaye waa far badan yihiin.
صح.
noloshoodii ka soo tageen, nolol ayaga ay absolute mastery ay u lahaayeen ay ka soo tageen, dhul oo qariib ay ku yihiin ay imaadeen. taas waxay dhashay in systemkii oo ka duwanaay wadankoodii inay la falgalaan, inay system kale fahmaan, in system kale bartaan, kii ay kadib koodii hadday ay haysan karaan iyo koo kale hadday qaadan karaan ay isbarbar dhigaan. waxaa waaye dad badanoo marka waxaa jiro markay meelahan imaadaan waxay ka cabsanayaan waxay ka cabsanayaan culture-kii inuu ka dhumo, hiddihii iyo dhaqankii inuu ka dhumo.
صح.
diintana muhiim waay, hiddii dhaqan mid waay.
صح. Actually it should be diinta first, culture everything else.
laakiin annaga dhinaca kale inoo kala tahay waqti ma marka waxaa waaye dad badanoo muslimiin badanna saasay u tahay. waxaa waaye diinta gadaal lay ka imaanaya, waxaa waaye waa ku noolnahay, waxaa waaye silent in the background.
Exactly.
silent in the background. laakiin taas waxay dhashay marka waalidiintii inay ayagoo wadankii rabaan inay ka faa'iidaystaan, ilmahooda rabaan inay ay si fiican uga faa'iidaystaan opportunity-ga iyo waxaas hor yaallo, waa iskeeni waayeen meelaha qaarkood.
صح.
meelaha qaarkood maadaama iskeeni waayeen waxaa dhacday dadkii inay communitygooda leh inay dhex joogaan waxaa waaye self affirmation markaasaa imaanayo communityga hadday dhex joogaan luuqad ma la baranayo
صح
luuqad ka sokow dadkii oo communitygooda ka ah dad kale ka yihiin
صح
them and us ma fahmino dhibaatooyinkaasay keentay ma fahmino marka waalidiinta dhibaatooyinkii haystay ayaga anaga marmarka qaarkood ma fahamsanayn haddii annagana qabsan lahayd tan ayaga qabsatay waxaa laga yaabaa inaan ka duwanaan lahayn saa un fikerayno
صح
ma fahmino
I mean problem badan naga haysta wadankan anyway, so it's not as if like we are problem free.
We're not anaga we are unique in our own right. They were unique in their own right.
صح
There are a lot of similarities between our community and other ethnic minority communities as well. I mean, the problems we have is not unique to us.
It's not unique, absolutely.
You know, we just believe it's unique to us, but it isn't. Okay. If the same thing, just like you said earlier, the same thing can be replicated in other places around the world. Different countries will have different values, different languages, different cultures, but yet any ethnic community that migrates to any other country will have similar problems across the board, essentially. Okay. What that unfortunately gives birth to is a slight disconnection between the parents, or rather the values of the parents, and what their offspring, what their children are going to hold value in. Sadly, we are in a society right now that our youth haven't taken, for whatever reason, they haven't taken part of it as effectively as they could.
Absolutely, as effectively as they could.
You know, I think I referred to them last time as
potential
losers with potential.
Losers with potential, yeah.
But that's just it. You're only loser in that moment. You don't have to be. You can change it. But the potential is what's important. If the potential is there, everything else is just a choice. If the potential is not there, well,
then you have a problem right there.
Then you have a problem. Because the important thing is, first of all, you have to know that you have a potential. Because if you don't know you have a potential, and if you don't have any kind of aspiration, you're not going to go towards it. You're not going to face it. Before we move on to young people, I know you've probably got a lot of questions, a lot of things that you want to discuss about them. On the topic of parents by themselves, we were really harsh. Harsh for the right reasons, but first let me clarify the differences the differences we have between the parents.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to start with my own parents.
Obviously, that's
okay. I'm going to start with my own parents because it helps. It helps me put things into perspective. I believe the way I'm thinking, or I'd like to think I'm a very rational person, you know, very inclusive person, and I'd like to say I'm capable of thought at many different levels. I would say that's primarily because of my parents and how I interacted with them. I had a great father.
Alhamdulillah.
Still do. I had a great mother. Still do. You know, I had an amazing relationship with them that I was able to communicate with effectively. I was recently having this a similar conversation about the one we had last time with my own father and with my own mother as well. And I would like to say my rationale essentially came from what they instilled in me.
It has to be, yeah, especially at a young age.
They communicated with me.
Yeah.
Not just myself, but of course my siblings. You know, we're all similar in that way. They communicated with me. They didn't simply shut me up because I was young, but rather they allowed me to have a dialogue with them at all given opportunities. Because it then gave me the confidence to be able to carry myself in between of adults, in between of society, or in society as a whole. And, you know, it's an amazing thing. That's unique to me and my parents. You know, I can't say the same thing is true for all of our young. You know, apart from the dialogue we had, I mean, I had an amazing education, you know, facilitated by my parents. You know, they gave me the support whenever I needed it. So that I'm truly humble for.
Alhamdulillah.
Other than that, for other young people now, if we really look at other people, the same thing may not necessarily be true, and parents may not always be at fault as well. There are a lot of parents who are working hard.
Sah.
There are a lot of parents who are doing the best that they can. Maybe they weren't educated to begin with. I mean, my parents were, highly educated. They both came from professional backgrounds. They both had a plethora of skill sets that they could, they allowed me to access.
Sah.
The same thing may not be true in the sense of, other parents. There were a lot of, although primarily women, there are a lot of people who came here with illiteracy problems. Didn't have a lot of education in that sense. This is common for Africa. This is possibly also common for some other parts around the world.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's true, but I'm not going to get into it. But what that meant is coming here was not only a challenge for the adult to try and grasp and learn and integrate as much as possible, but rather it was actually a completely new way of life.
Sah.
So vastly different from the way they lived back, the humble lives they lived back home, that it couldn't be replicated here. But they tried as best as they could to replicate it. They kept it, that whole segregation from the wider community, or self-imposed segregation from the wider community, is because I'm going to try and hold on to what values I have. I'm going to try and hold on to my religion. I'm going to hold on to my, culture, identity, ethnicity as much as possible. That translated as a form of, I'm going to keep behaving like I'm still living back home.
Yeah.
And that doesn't work. It really doesn't work.
It doesn't. The thing is, back home, they weren't so isolated. Back home, actually, they were very, very open. They reached out to their neighbors. They reached out to, anybody that was living within that vicinity that they were. So I think they did not replicate the lifestyle that they had back home, because if they did, reaching out to your neighbor and getting to know your neighbors and anybody else that lives closer to you, it doesn't require it's a basic human interaction. Okay. So I don't think they've replicated that bit. They might have replicated other stuff, I think that bit they held back, because if you see it, most of us are within, we are very, very closed people. We hardly reach out to other people. Hence why I think I was reading an article and they described, where was it? Probably it was a journal, a research piece. It described the Somali community as impenetrable. So that was a very interesting word for me, because regardless of what you have in mind or what you want to do, we're going to get into it. Interestingly, the Norwegian government has also conducted a commission to understand the Somali community, because unemployment amongst them was so high and they couldn't really understand why. So they commissioned a whole study. So that's the thing. For example, I think the basic things that we need to do is, if we understand that we live in a multi-ethnicity or multicultural society, that you're not the only one living in this country, then what happens is you actually reach out, you try to learn, you get out of your little box that you're in. So it is not only also I'm only gonna reach out so and so because he is Hamari, he is Red Hamar, or because now my neighbor is Hawad or Hawargidir or something like that, somebody who I have a minute sort of relationship to, because that bonding that we have within the same Qabili Wahas. So what happens is, if somebody moves next to you, even I have seen it in East London, even the Barawa community and the Hamar community, if they live not side by side but next to each other, normally the Barawanis are very close to the Barawa people if they live next to another Barawa family. and same with the Rahman family, same with the, so even even with us being Somalis, we still like divide ourselves within our own little subcategories. So I think the isolation bit is the mindset. It is something that, you know, is holding us back for some reason, because if you're only going to reach out to your fellow, you know, Barawa community, or your fellow Hamar community, or your fellow Abgal or something, then come on, how on earth, when are you you know, it makes
You're right.
things very difficult.
You're right. I think what you said about they didn't necessarily replicate their life back home, in the sense that they integrated quite well and they were free when they were back home, as opposed to when they're here, they're very closed and as a community, impenetrable, essentially.
Yeah,
That's the word
impenetrable.
used. Yeah, that's true. Back home, back in Somalia, people lived in a community. Their community transcended their house.
So
It was inclusive. It was the neighbors. Neighbors from different backgrounds, different tribal backgrounds, essentially, all lived as a whole. Here, that's not necessarily true. Unfortunately, that's the sad reality. That's not it's not 100% true here. Because I think the fear of losing self-identity is what kept them isolated here, but that isn't true for back home. Back home, there is no such fear. There is no fear for, religion. There is no fear for, community identity. There's no fear for individual identity and all of that. As a matter of fact, the community raises your kids with you. This is one thing I remember.
Yeah.
Your neighbor, your even perfect stranger, will still look out for you, and this is what I remember it to be. But here, it isn't true. I think the wider community here, not necessarily Somali, but the wider community here in Britain and in the West, is one that's isolated in itself, as in individual families are separate from neighbors, for example. They may each have their own sets of friends and family and things like that, and they may be well connected that way, just like we are, but you don't really know your neighbor here. You don't know them as well as you would when we were back home. Back home, your neighbor was your family. You looked after them as much as they looked after you.
So is that a problem in this country, rather than something that you can point the finger to Somali community?
I don't think that's a Somali community issue.
But if they had such a brilliant, what do you call it? That connection within their neighbors. I don't know what the right word is. Why didn't they replicate that as soon as they got here? Why did they reach out to their neighbors? Or it just doesn't work? Different environment, different system.
It's not that it doesn't work or it's a different environment or anything like that. I think the very fear that they had of losing self-identity is what kept them from it. And also, don't forget, the wider community itself is very PC. It's so politically correct that, let's not interfere.
Okay.
Culture, I find it really distasteful, to be honest with you. And I think it's one that it's going to lead a lot of young people astray, to be honest. If you're unable to integrate because you fear what other people are going to be, for fear of other people's potential offense, then you have a problem. Yeah, I think. And then this is a problem for all of us. This is all right.
Inshallah, we'll move on from that. I hope we've clarified that, and we are the critics, or those not critics, I'd say, but those who did give us a feedback. Thank you very much, and I hope you are very much happy with our answer. Moving on from that, so the topic today is young people in Somalia. It's something that we haven't really touched on previously. And so hopefully, inshallah, we'll try to get into that. We're gonna get stuck in, inshallah. Okay, so Jared, the young people or the youngsters growing up, the Somalis growing up in this country, what do they identify themselves with? do they first think that they're British, Somali, or black? What do they identify themselves with?
It's vague, I think, because their sense of Somali identity is strong in certain scenarios.
Sah.
You will see that, I don't know if you follow any social media accounts and things like that, you will see it so prevalent in that way. Whenever something Somali is happening,
Yeah,
they are wholly and truly Somali.
Somali.
When it comes to, education, when it comes to work, when it comes to, relationship and all of those things, for whatever reason, they're not Somali. They haven't inherited that way. So I don't think they identify themselves, they identify completely with the wider Somali community. I don't think, because for them to 100% identify with it, they would have to accept all values within it. All the challenges that come with it, all the, wonderful things that come with it, the food, for example. But I don't think they identify themselves wholly with one identity. And that's a problem in itself. And we briefly discussed that, I think, last time we had a conversation about, and we discussed it within tribalism and things like that, having a strong self-identity.
It's very important.
It's very important. They don't have that. I don't think they do. They believe they do, but I don't think they do. Because if they did, if young people understood where they fit in society and how well they can cultivate the opportunities within it, we wouldn't have high crime rate. We wouldn't have high crime rate. We wouldn't have a lot of young people incarcerated.
Unemployment and all that.
Unemployment. The unemployment in itself, I think we slightly discussed that last time.
We'll discuss it. We'll discuss it more.
We can discuss that, no problem.
We'll get back to that later.
No problem. That, this is slightly different for parents and young people. But young people, if I were to just primarily focus on them briefly, then it's because they are unaware of what opportunities lie ahead of them, or rather how well they can cultivate that opportunity, that they're unable to move beyond certain boundaries. It's a glass ceiling of some kind.
Do they identify themselves more as British than Somali, or they just don't really look into that kind of stuff?
I think they identify themselves as British, young British, black Somali. I would probably say it in that manner, because they wouldn't feel comfortable going back home. So
do you think, in your opinion, that we are somehow going through this identity crisis that, because the thing is that this whole Britishness is very loose term, because British, us living in living in London makes us English rather than British, because British is very loose. And anybody can say, I am British, but okay, then specifically, Britishness just means as a Greater Britain. But why are we so afraid to say that I am English? Or is that term associated with Adan only?
I don't think we're English.
Why is that?
I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me on this, but I don't think we're English.
What does the term Englishness mean then, if that's the case?
I think, are we Somali, first of all?
Oh, you tell me.
No, simple answer.
I don't know what.
Do you consider yourself Somali?
If your parents are Somali, I guess you consider yourself Somali. Okay. I am Somali, first of all, just to answer your question. But
okay, let me try and put it into words then. For the same reason that a Somali, 100% Somali in not just nationality, but in historical and ethnical, background and things like that, they would be 100% Somali. And somebody else who came to Somalia, for example, and lived there, and even if they, had many generations, would we accept them as Somali?
Yeah.
Why do we have a lot of clan warfare then? Why do we have a lot of segregation?
To answer your question exactly, in Somalia, for example, there's a lot of ethnic communities in Somalia. Okay? I don't know. I don't want to get into that, because that itself it creates a lot of problems. And if you settle into a country and you live there for generations, I think probably 3 generations or 100, 150 years, then obviously you identify yourself. For example, another example is the Indian. Okay, so the Indians, they have this distinct, obviously, look that you can tell Indian from anything else. So if you see an Indian Malaysian, they look like the Indian that's from India.
Right.
So, but they identify themselves as Indian Malaysian or something like that. I think I don't know. It's very, very hard, man.
So, by that logic, we are British Somalis.
Well, why not English Somali?
By all means, but I'm still going to say British Somalis rather than English, because I think the English, the term English, I think specifies in the same way that we would use it for Somali.
So the term
We
English
don't
specifies for ethnic people.
I think so. I think so.
No. Is it ethnic or it's not ethnic, is it? It is indigenous. Is that the right word?
I would probably say ethnic rather than indigenous, because I think if we go back far enough in history, things will change.
Things will change. Yeah, that's the thing, though. I mean, how far can you go back to? It's best just to park all that and say, you know what? If you feel like you're British, just get on with it, man. If you feel like you're English,
we're British.
But
we're both.
I think it's other people's perception. Sometimes they look at you and say, "You're not British. You're not English." I think that's where the problem comes in, because they question your absolute. That's the thing. It's not about us.
I have a question for you.
Go on.
How many times have you been asked, "Where are you from?"
Many, many times.
What do you say?
To be honest with you, sometimes I say straight up Somali.
Why?
Why? Because I'm fed up with that question.
Why do you not say British or English?
I am fed up because they're not convinced. As soon as I tell them that I am British, that's not what they want to hear.
Does it matter whether they're convinced or not? Why are you not? It's the real question.
I had that conviction to begin with, but I got tired. It became so exhausting that I just thought, you know what, man, the reason why you've asked me that question is because the color of my skin. Because I have this look that you think you don't know where it came from, and you want to sort of point to it, but you can't really put your finger to it. That's why you've asked me. So if I say, for example, if I answer them that say, "Oh, I am British," they will just say, oh, that reaction obviously is not what they're looking for.
Even if you say you were born here, grew up here, as British as it gets, really, you're still going to be asked, where are you from?
Why is that?
Where are your parents from? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
In that same rhetoric, I think we can't claim to be English.
So we will always have this identity crisis.
We are barely claiming to be British. How can we claim to be English? I think this is the problem here.
That goes to show that we are going through this identity crisis then. Yeah. Because I think that is big, because if you don't know, if you can't really settle to something, because if you say Somali, Somali, all this negative stuff that follows being Somali, you don't want to say, because the thing is, Somali, as soon as you say Somali, it comes with, immigrant, it comes with piracy, it comes with all these, stuff that is just not very good in society.
Yes. Yeah.
And the moment that obviously we are proud Somalis, okay? But unfortunately, it carries this heavy weight negativeness that you rather say I am British Somali, or that is different. I'm not gonna. I was gonna say something else. There's a lot of Somalis that say that I'm from Kenya, something like that. But we get to that. So why are we so like? Why are we the most vilified community? Migrant community in Europe.
One of, definitely.
Yeah.
But the vilification definitely exists, and I think.
What have we done?
Rather than it's what have we not done. I think that's the problem. I think it's because we are so, we are so subservient and so unaware of our own potential, as people, that we're not part of the wider community. The vilification is only there because we allowed it to be there. How many other communities do you know that are not as vilified, but potentially have a lot more problems within them than us?
I think the West Indies, probably the Black Caribbean.
The BME communities as a whole suffers from similar issues.
Yeah,
Then there is a specific. Then there are specific issues related to each community. And I recently had a discussion with an interesting lady from Congo. She's a British national. She's as successful as it gets as a human being in Britain, and certainly working towards her own goals in life. But our discussion essentially culminated in having identified very similar issues between her community and our community. So I think our community doesn't suffer from the problems by itself.
So you think it's a wider general African problem?
Well, yeah, I think rather than just African, but I think it's a wider problem for all ethnic minorities. But of course, the levels of these problems will still differ based on how many professionals come from each of these communities, or how many professionals each of these communities have. How well have we integrated part of society? I mean, how many doctors do you know that are Somali, for example? How many GPs? But how many doctors, for example, are black in general? Many. How many doctors are Asian? Very many. Matter of fact, I don't think the NHS would survive without minorities or ethnic minorities. But why is it that the Somali community as a whole hasn't really grasped onto, just get on with it and take part of life as much as the rest of the communities? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I get you. We didn't really participate in the wider society then?
We're not. I think it's going to be our generation that will eventually. Definitely, the following generation will fare a lot better, 100%. But I think it's because a lot of the issues that we encounter include, identity crisis and, a lot of problems that we potentially inherited from our parents as well, and that we haven't been able to
is it dragging us back?
Integrate. It is dragging us back a little bit, but that's just it though. I mean, I personally like to place emphasis on self-responsibility. At which point do your parents give you the mantle for your life? At which point are you now wholly responsible for your life?
Tell us.
That's just it though. I think that answer in itself is a vague one as a whole, because
what do you think?
Personally, I think if you've had the right communication with your child from a young age and you've cultivated their mind in the right way,
not shut them down.
Yeah, we do that very often, don't we? Don't speak near adults because you don't qualify. We already second-classing children well before at the moment they're developing, and if they learn to be subservient in that way, they're gonna exhibit the same attitudes in.
But in turn, they could say that what do you call it? Not edeb daraway. Qofka, for example, adiga or adults marka joogan oo meesha ku hadlaysa edeb daraway. Do you not see it that way?
No, I don't. I think.
So would you rather let them finish what they're saying and say, "Oh, mashallah, okay, thank you"?
No, I don't. Rather than being all hippy dippy about it as well, I think the important thing is, if you are going to speak to your child, they need to know when they can access you. They need to know when they can access you, and they need to know when you are unavailable for a communication. We know that as adults. Why is it that we don't teach that to the young?
Good point. I think why is it that we don't teach that? I think it is absolutely, you hit the nail on the head. It's because we just don't convey that or pass that on from, because if we are having an adult conversation, you know when to stop, you know when to talk. And if somebody is talking, you don't overtalk them. That is rude, okay? So if our youngsters are, if they have something to say, I think we should give them the time and space for them to say it, because it gives them that mental development.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you in that sense. Do you think the fact that we're not visible in other social activities, hinders our sort of progress.
Like, what do you mean?
For example, we don't get involved in sports much. I mean, we have Mo Farah. I think he got there by, I don't know, I'm never going to say accident, obviously, sheer, determination and thingy. We're just not really visible in sports activities, social activities, like, things that the British society does, whether it's a protest, anything that is like, outside our own thingy, we're just not visible. Do you think, or should I explain?
No, I think I get what you mean. To some degree, I agree with you. I think because we don't take part of...
What happened to the Somali, by the way? How we ditched it?
No, I think if we're talking about young people, I think we should speak English.
Sah.
If we're going to talk to adults,
we speak
the
Somali.
alternate, I think we should speak Somali, because I think there is that gap again. This is the problem here. We're going back over it. I don't know if we're feeding it, but we hopefully try to fix it.
Inshallah.
Sports as a whole, we watch it, but that's as far as
but we
do.
don't participate
That's as far as
in
we
it.
go. I mean, my younger brother is an athlete, so my own family.
What does he do?
He's been a track athlete for a long time. And he's played basketball. He's played. He's trained with the likes of Limford Christie and many people. So, but that's unique to him. He figured out what he finds passionate. He figured out what he's really good at, and he's a really good athlete, actually.
Actually, we are very, like, we're good at, athletics and things like that. Do you think we should pursue that more than education, or we should mix it?
I'll give you
we do have the legs.
I'll give you an interesting example.
Looks of things.
You're right. First of all, I think we are good at it. We don't know, but we are good at certain things. Of course, not everything. I mean, I don't think, on the average, Somali people are generally slim built, right? So I don't think we're going to dominate.
Should we get controversial or not really?
Well,
park that.
It's your show. It's up to you.
Okay,
I really don't mind. But we're not going to end up dominating the strongman records anytime soon.
No.
I don't think so. Okay, maybe some of us, some of the men, some of the people, some of the women in our communities might be outright strong and could perhaps be could end up becoming world record holders.
Yeah.
But on average, that's not going to be true. But that's kind of true for everybody else as well. Anyway, these are very dedicated sports kind of thing. A lot of the types of sports that we would be good at, we're almost designed for long distance.
Yeah, we are. And we just don't go into it.
It's so... But that's just it, though. Fitness, nutrition, we just lack. As a whole. I don't know whether you want to discuss fitness, nutrition at some point.
We'll probably discuss that in another topic.
That's fine. But I think that's, to just briefly say, this is an area where we haven't bothered looking into. I mean, I know we had this brief discussion not so long ago. My own history, my own personal background, I took up sports on and off in different scenarios, different sports as well.
But we also do at a young age, but professionally, I'm talking about professionally. Why don't we pursue that, inner ability that we have? For example, that long distance running, and even football. We do enjoy football so much.
Football, it seems to be a growing trend for sure.
Yeah, but the thing is, in this country, in order for you to get into football, it's quite simple. And at young age, you sign up your child with an academy, and from that point onwards, the child just grows. If he or she excels, then they will go on to.
But you just said it. You have to be signed up as a child.
Yeah, but that's the thing.
Is this a parent issue?
It's a parent issue because maybe they don't It's a parent issue because otherwise, that 7-year-old, 8-year-old will never be able to go to the academy and ask, "Oh, can I just sign up?" It's impossible. It's the parents. So, do they realize that we have this potential in us, that we are actually, we have this inner potential? I think that we're good at sports, I think, because we have the body for it, I think, in my opinion anyway, especially at track.
You're right. I think
athletics.
I think adults
don't
place much emphasis on sports anyway. they're generally unfit.
Unfit.
Generally unfit.
Yes.
Sorry to say.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You know, this is a topic very, very dear to me.
Yeah. No, we'll definitely dedicate a whole topic to health and well-being, inshallah.
I think adults, parents, don't recognize sports as a potential career. So that's probably why a lot of young people, a lot of kids don't get signed up to these academies as much in the same way that they other communities might be able to do. So,
Ahmed, time is of essence at the moment.
Okay.
If we move away from all that, I want to get into a topic that is, to me, it is incredibly important at the heart of all this problem, because a lot of people don't discuss it and we don't talk about it. I don't know if we should do it in Somali or in English. The topic that I want to discuss is poverty amongst the Somali community. Should we discuss it in English or Somali?
I think we should discuss it in English.
Okay, let's do it. Let's do it in English. Let's do it in English.
Yeah.
We live in a country that is third largest economy in the world, and we don't live in Somalia. You know, alhamdulillah, we live in a very healthy society, and the opportunities, free schools, free healthcare, and employment, if you need to find a job, is relatively easy, not that difficult. Despite all that, and there's the statistics states that obviously it's a little bit old, it's 2011, over 80% Somalis in the UK are living in free school meals. They measure this stuff when it comes to poverty in this country, who receives free school meals, who receives benefit, and if you are in the social housing. So that's how they categorize these things anyway. So the Somali community is over 80% qualify for free school meals. That means that they are somehow in poverty. Why do you think that is the case?
Because as a build-up from our last conversation on the similar topic, because there are a lot of single parents, a lot of single mothers who solely...
Is that true, single parents, or...?
Well, that's the other thing. I mean, I would love to actually discuss this topic in more detail, and I don't think we have plenty of time.
No, we don't.
So I won't say the controversial stuff.
Actually, I think we might only have the time for this bit. We'll see if we can touch education, but anyways, let's go on. Go on.
Let me just say this now. I think a lot of these parents, whether they are single parents or whether they are binary parents, it's nonetheless their sole reliance on benefits that keeps them below the poverty line, or at least on the poverty line, because I don't think they believe they're in poverty.
They don't. I think if you speak to many Somali families, they'll probably tell you, what are you talking about, poverty?
Exactly.
What poverty? We have something to eat, we have a roof over our head. What poverty are you talking about? But actually, statistically speaking, they are in poverty. Are they in denial, and how can we address this issue and make them understand that they're actually in poverty in this country?
I think what's happening is that we are understanding it.
We understand that,
absolutely. We are getting it, and we will eventually be the elder generation very soon.
Well, that is going to be in the next 20, 30 years,
well,
yes.
20 years is, it's going to fly very, very quickly, to be honest with you. If you stay focused in your life, enjoy it as much as possible, but stay focused nonetheless. 20 years is going to go by quickly, but it can be a productive 20 years.
30s already.
Exactly. This is the thing. I think because we're recognizing it, we are questioning that lifestyle. We're questioning, do we really want to live in this kind of, lifestyle which we can't afford anything? If in order to buy a pair of trainers, you have to skimp, you have to save, a long time. In order to, this is as young, as young people, in order to, go buy a car.
You
have to, you
need 3 years of Ayuto.
By the way, I really like the Ayuto system. It really works. It's a great way of saving.
But if you have to save, go into Ayuto for 3 years just to buy a car, that clearly shows that actually, this thing is actually true. So how do we get out of this? Work pays?
You have to. No, first of all, I'm an advocate of not working for people.
I'm kidding.
No, of course. I advocate. I always advocate. If you can work for yourself, prioritize that.
Sir.
Because your goals can manifest within that.
Sir.
Hopefully, far sooner than working for someone.
Sir.
But however, if working for someone means you're actually getting closer to your goal or whatever
Exactly.
your goal is, by all means, do that. I mean, for example, doctors, they have to work. Majority of the time, they have to work for an institution like the NHS. So they can't go at it alone unless they've got so much, experience and things like that. They open their own clinic. Then it becomes a business, not just the support that they can give people on a interpersonal level, but rather it becomes a business as well. So they have to look after. But I think important thing is you have to have goals. The only way to get out of all of this is you have to have the goals. I think this is true primarily for young people. We believe in a future that doesn't exist.
What do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is tomorrow is a construct. It's a false construct. Yesterday is a reality. Tomorrow is a false construct. What I mean by that is you are living your present now. Your present will very quickly become your past. But you don't know what the future is going to be like. And the only way to cultivate, the only way to take advantage of the future is if you live your present for what you wish to attain in this hypothetical future. Because if you're not living your life based on what that hypothetical future could look like, then you're lying to yourself.
That is some serious philosophical thought, I must admit. So, do you think we're not living in the present?
I don't think so. I think we live in a hypothetical life as well.
Do you think the fact that we are so much connected back home financially, economically, is having an effect on our lifestyle or standards in this country?
Our parents, yes.
Our parents, they raising kids.
Our parents, yes, because not only are they from benefits money, by the way, not only are they raising their children, but they're also sending money and supporting other families, sometimes multiple families.
Back home.
We're not talking multiple individuals, we're talking multiple families. Okay, and we have large families, as you know. Okay, so our parents, yes. Young people, not so much. I think there's a good percentage of them actually having inherited that, the responsibility from their parents and actually are supporting people back home, their family, which is, great on them. Good for you if you're doing that. But not everybody is doing that. I personally know a lot of young people who don't do that. But what keeps them in that circle? Because if they're going to use that as the excuse of, oh, my family has to support, no, but, you're not supporting that same family. Your parents are supporting that family, not you. So what keeps you as the young person tied into the same glass ceiling that you created for yourself, can I add, as your parents possibly had, do you know what I mean? Do you understand?
Yeah.
So this is
that also coming back to that. That's that. That brings us to our second point. Actually, is nearly 75% of the Somali families live in a council or council rented properties. So again, that is the highest proportion in any migrant community. Highest. So basically, when it comes to benefit and a council living in a council home, we are the highest. So that same aspirations, no aspirations that our parents had, I think is having a knock-on effect on the younger generation as well, because now they're seeking to be in that council flat. It's the same thing.
It is, yes, it is having that knock-on effect, because the parents have generally persuaded and, I don't know if I can say persuaded them, but I think I would say
encouraged them
in that way of thinking.
Yeah.
But it's up to the young person to transcend.
Yeah, but there's so many youngsters in this day, in 2019, that think that the only way for me to attain this, get into the property ladder, or somehow is through council home, and they go through hoops, okay, to get to that thingy. Instead of, I don't know, I mean, obviously it all comes down to maybe education or something. So whatever that the problem that the first immigrant generation or our parents had, the youngsters who are growing up in this country are having the same thing. So if I mean, this data is quite old anyway. It's 2011, and I'm hoping that the next statistics that
I think the data will be very different.
Yeah, it will be very, very different. So I mean, 80% is huge. That is crazy, and 75% living in the council home. That again, that is huge. So there's another crazy research that was done in Tower Hamlet. The Somalis are twice as likely to be behind in the rent than any other community.
Well, if we're talking about parents, it's probably because
parents,
they are paying that money somewhere else.
Yeah,
they are supporting other people.
So if we have that problem, 80% in through free school meals, 75% in council, and then the research suggests that you're unable to pay your rent. So that is the Somali thing again. That that whole negative thingy, Somali. So carrying that, actually it becomes a bit of a burden because of the negativity that your community is building towards. Yeah,
I think you're right. This whole being behind it, rent and things like that, it's an interesting thing, by the way.
It's only the papers is only in Tower Hamlet, so I must reiterate, okay. It's not the case in any other borough, but specifically it's just something that I have read. I mean, Tower Hamlet, there's a lot of Somalis in Tower Hamlet. Yeah, many Somalis in Tower Hamlet.
The reasons, even if other boroughs,
the second is probably white working class.
Okay, even if other boroughs are very different statistically, the Somali community itself is very similar in whichever borough they're in. Okay, they're very similar. It's probably because of a higher concentration being in Tower Hamlets, meaning now you can see data a lot clearer, and essentially sadly being so prevalent to be number one or the highest rent arrears community. But these are problems which we must address.
Yeah.
We must address. We have to be able to figure out ways we can get past them. And the only way we can get past them is if we have realistic goals. We can't just hope.
No.
You can't just say, one day I'm going to be rich, one day I'm going to be a millionaire, one day. Actually, you will probably find that if you get there, you're still just as unhappy as you were when you didn't have it.
Yeah.
Because you now have that many more problems as well. Okay? But if you are content with your life as it is now, and then within that, appreciation, you build upon it block by block, you will be able to reach greater heights and be able to transcend rent arrears, for example. That's, how can you get out of it? If you don't have pure goals of how to get out of it, it's exactly the same as having credit card bills that are unpaid, that keep accruing interest and things like that. If you don't have a plan for them, they will destroy you.
Yeah.
And even if rent arrears, maybe they're not as bad as sometimes not as bad as credit card bills. Nonetheless, they will affect you.
They will affect you.
Credit score is another thing. For whatever reason, our community doesn't even have any interest.
I mean, that brings us right down to education.
Yeah.
If your living standard is so low, if you are directly linked in poverty, if your living standard is low, it'll be very difficult for you to get much out of education. So,
but where does self-responsibility come into that? This is why I struggle in just purely putting the blame on poverty. Yeah, poverty has a lot of problems. It creates so many problems for society, so many problems for the people experiencing it. If you have not experienced it, you don't know the problems. You could just imagine them. You may sympathize or empathize, whatever the word is, but it's nonetheless a difficult situation. If you don't take self-responsibility for whatever your ability, at whatever your ability level is, then you're never gonna move past, oh, I'm poor, or I must be, educated that much lower because I'm poor.
Yeah.
No, that doesn't fly.
Yeah, that same
fly.
thing, that paper, the piece that I've read in Tower Hamlet, it says that 33% of the Somali school children achieve 5 or more good GCSEs, compared with 60% kids in the Bangladeshi community and 78% in the Nigerian community. So not only, has that affected us, socially, educationally, 33% is very, very low. What happens to the rest of that, 67%?
Potential, losers with potential.
68% though.
I know that's a joke, but the sad reality is that they are not interested in it. Or rather, they have not inherited a will to be interested in their own background. I would recommend, I don't know how many of the Somali community actually like reading books and things like that. I would recommend a lot of people to get into reading books.
Yeah.
Or
the youngsters mainly, the youngsters now. Yeah.
But that's
get out there,
because of
use
school.
the resources that you have.
But when I say books, I'm talking about, look at the types of books that will get you to recognize yourself. I mean, personally speaking, I love reading books. My favorite genre of books is actually books that make me self-aware as much as possible.
Sure.
If people can get into these, into ways of figuring themselves out, if you don't like reading books, go and find a mentor. If you don't, go find a mentor, physical mentor, somebody that you can actually go and say, look, man, I have this problem. How can I see past it? How can I move past it? If your own parents are not there for you in the way that you want them to be there for you,
there's help.
fine.
There's help out there.
There is help out there. Go to contact us.
Yeah. Contact us. Hopefully,
we don't mind.
Yeah. You actually, you can copy and paste that problem across Europe. And also, what I have seen in just a quick thing, summary that I've read, something in Denmark. The Somali community are amongst the least employed community. And earlier I was telling you about the Norwegian government. They got so surprised that the unemployment amongst the Somali community is so high that they commissioned a research as to why that is, so that they could understand the Somalis better. I mean, it is the problem is not only in this country. It seems like it's everywhere. It's within us. I think it is. We need to look into ourselves and say, hang on a minute. The society that we live in now is totally different to the one that we lived back home. We need to raise our kids differently. There are challenges. So we need to face these challenges and overcome these problems. There's a lot of support out there. I mean, if you coming out, if obviously half of the all the GCSE participants, if they're only receiving 30 to 40% of decent GCSE, I mean that doesn't define your life. By the way, I must say you can always make changes in your life, and if you didn't get a good GCSE, it doesn't mean that you're gonna fail. But it's just like it's a little barometer at this stage of your life, just to see that where you are. You can always improve.
Yeah, to get into specific fields, you need certain types of education. If you are not interested in those fields, education doesn't have to be the only way in life. Entrepreneurial minds are not always the most educated. In fact, some of the most successful people are not the most educated. So I think there's that false.
But education also points out your weaknesses and strengths, because you get to know yourself.
Yes, I think you will get to know yourself, at least academically, where you can fit yourself, where you can apply yourself as much as possible. But hopefully, if we do this again, there are other areas we should look at, like emotional intelligence and things like that, which will greatly influence how better off in life you become. Because we are very impulsive people. This is not solely Somali people. I'm talking about as a whole. Community, everybody. Majority of the time, people are very impulsive. We all think, the world revolves around us individually. you know, we all think we are it. We are, you know, the business. We are the one that, we are the most important individual in any room. Act like it. That's what I'd like to say.
Act like it. Well, thank you very much, Ahmed. It's been a pleasure having you in the studios.
It really has been.
And we did come to an end of our program. So inshallah, hopefully, tomorrow might or might not be Eid. If it's Eid tomorrow, everybody, all our listeners on the Facebook, our viewers on Facebook, Eid Mubarak. And hopefully, inshallah, we see you guys again next Monday. For now, thank you very much, and thank you for participating. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi, listening. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
एक मुद्दत से